what are ordinals and why should we learn about them, right? So first, to understand ordinals, we need to understand what are NFTs, how the blockchain is structured. In the first iteration of the web, you just had information being given to you, being provided to you. And everyone had their own websites. You had things like Yahoo, right, which were giving you the news, etc. There was no interactivity built in. Now, the second iteration of the web, what is called Web 2, is where you could start searching for information. And that's where Google came in, and you could also start interacting with other people, right? So you could also have a social network. You could interact with other people like Facebook, MySpace, Orkut. All of these were very popular. In Web3, what happened is that now all that interaction between the people and who is serving you the information, all of that is controlled by companies and it's centralized. So the basic premise behind the blockchain and Web3, etc., is that you build everything in a decentralized way. Now, decentralization has two key aspects to it. One is data being decentralized, and the second is even your computation, right? Where are you storing the programs? Everything being decentralized. Bitcoin is nothing but movement of software into money. Again, in a decentralized way, right? You had software and money, you had, banks having their online operations. A lot of currency right now is online, but it's still controlled by centralized banks and central governments and central entities, companies as well, right? Like MasterCard, Visa, which basically help you do the transactions. In India, you have UPI, which goes from bank to bank. But again, you have banks in the middle. In 2008 or so, we had a lot of distrust of the system because there was this huge banking crisis. There was this huge mortgage crisis in the US, right? Housing crisis, which led to a huge recession in 2008. Basically, what happened was banks were lending out a lot of loans to buy houses. And in the US, in any case, this is a known fact that a lot of people try to live beyond their means, right? Lending is very, very high as compared to the output and GDP of the society. Economic activity revolves around taking debt. Now, if you take a look at the overall system itself and the way the banks and the governments are structured, usually all governments owe a debt to the banks. They take money as debt from the bank, much over and beyond what they are actually generating in taxes, and they keep the economy running. That is why you have inflation as well. Central banks give away money, more and more money is generated, right? There's no limit to the money. And governments can take as much money as they want as debt until the point where inflation becomes high. Then they try to rein it in for a few years. And then you have a little bit of loss of jobs, etc. Because only when there's growth, you have more and more jobs, more and more opportunities. Population also keeps rising. Plus income levels are rising. So you need a little bit of inflation kind of is built into the system. You have a lot of centralization. People at the top are printing money, and people, the masses and the average people are working for that money. What happened with Bitcoin is that in 2008, this white paper was written by an anonymous person who a lot of people have speculated who he is, but no one knows it yet, called Satoshi Nakamoto. And in the white paper, he kind of envisioned an alternative financial system which is not dependent on any centralized entity. Again, the number of and the currency that he termed, which will actually work on this blockchain technology, he coined that as Bitcoin. And the way it is structured is that certain number of Bitcoin will get released over time as transactions happen. Plus, what will happen is Bitcoin, the total number of Bitcoin is limited to 21 million Bitcoin. You don't have devaluation of your currency itself because the total amount of currency that will be in existence is limited. Now, to create a Bitcoin, get Bitcoin or transact in Bitcoin, you don't need, theoretically, as it was envisioned, to go through government controls, right? So that kind of takes you away from the centralized entities, and you kind of control everything through software, and the whole system is written in software. The whole mechanics behind it is laid out in software. So if you can understand what is written in the code, right, and the way it is structured, then that is how it is going to work. So Bitcoin actually was the first blockchain which became popular. Then you had all the cryptocurrency, as you can call it. Then in around 2014-15 is where Ethereum kind of took off. Now, Ethereum is actually run by Ethereum Foundation. There is a little bit of, criticism that it takes because people say that it is not as decentralized as Bitcoin. Now, that also has a decentralized structure. Decentralized structure basically means you have multiple people running nodes or EVM machines. And because you are running the network and validating transactions, all data storage, everything is on chain. Whatever is required to be on chain as far as the transactions are concerned. Plus Ethereum also, now on Bitcoin you could only do plus minus. That was the usual understanding, that you have financial transactions, you will understand who has how much Bitcoin in their account, and you will know that who has transacted from A to B and B to C, etc. So you'll have a global ledger which is public, right? It's totally public. Now, what is public and private here is, you know that which account ID, key as you call it, which account has how much money. All of that is public. But who is behind each account is private on all blockchains, mostly. Now you have a different way of kind of figuring out who's behind it, because all money, initially when you buy your first amount of cryptocurrency, you may end up having to go through a centralized exchange. And centralized exchanges like Binance, or in India WazirX, etc., they all are required and mandated by government to do their KYC. And now government is also trying to do taxation on all of these transactions. So whenever you take money out and actually convert it into money and you have an income from it, government will tax you, and for that it needs to know who you are. So it is not fully private any further, but more or less you can call it as, if you take extreme measures, never go through a centralized exchange, you can actually have total privacy. Before this KYC and etc. thing started, a lot of information is still quite private, right? So you have huge accounts which hold like millions of dollars or billions of dollars of worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum, which no one knows who's behind them. Now, that's as far as the privacy is concerned. See, Bitcoin was only able to do plus and minus, right? Which account has how much. It was able to track transactions and have a decentralized ledger, global decentralized ledger of who has how much money in Bitcoin, right? And what are the transactions that have happened. That is what the blockchain is. There was no way of storing any further data apart from transaction data and finance. Now, apart from this, now what happened is Ethereum came into the picture. Vitalik Buterin is the founder, one of the founders. And what they did was, they were looking at what they can do with Bitcoin to do something more, right? How do you run code? How do you run programs on Bitcoin? But they weren't able to figure that out. So they actually went and launched Ethereum. Ethereum actually has its own programming language that they created called Solidity. And you can basically run code in a decentralized way. All the code is also stored in a decentralized way on the Ethereum blockchain. And you can actually store data also on chain in the Ethereum blockchain. But Ethereum was designed in such a way that most of the data is actually not stored on Ethereum. At least the ancillary data, for example, digital artifacts, as they call NFTs, right? Digital goods. Now, all of that data is usually stored in IPFS. Now, what is this NFT thing in any case? Let's explain that. NFTs are something where you have digital ownership. It's any digital product. You can put an image. It started with JPEGs, which is the most biggest use case even right now. Videos, you have like music files, right? So all of this can be stored permanently. At least that was the thought behind it, in a decentralized way. But what ended up happening in reality on the Ethereum blockchain, because storing data on the chain, because there's so many people have to validate it, right, is actually quite expensive, especially on the Ethereum blockchain. Same thing with Solana blockchain. Data is not actually stored on the chain. Most of the blockchains, data is not stored on chain. What is stored on chain is pointers. And Ethereum is also made in such a way that this pointer will point to, oh, you know what, stored data is there. And then it points to something called IPFS or Arweave, which are like mini blockchains or mini decentralized way, which are not really decentralized mediums. And if that goes down, your data also goes down, right? You're left with empty pointers on the Ethereum blockchain, which is not good. But of course, Ethereum NFTs took off. You have Bored Ape Yacht Club, CryptoPunks in 2017, Bored Ape Yacht Club in 2021, which has done extremely well. And then a lot of big projects which have made millions of dollars for the founders, for people trading them. Slowly people started to realize that, you know what, our data is not secure, and there was this whole movement which started putting some data by doing a lot of operations on chain. So you have companies like art blocks, which actually put data on chain. You have companies like, you have a NFT collection called Checks, which initially started off in a off-chain way, and then the founder Jack Butcher actually allowed people, or asked people, to burn the NFTs which are off-chain and get an NFT which is on-chain. And then he had this whole structure, and Checks NFT is something that we have covered. It's a very fascinating story. I think Jack Butcher probably earned like $150,000 in the beginning itself, and then $2 million in Checks NFT in the next 2-3 months, and did pretty well. And then he's now doing OPEPEN, which again has earned him quite a bit of money, and a huge following, right? He actually exploded and had this amazing mechanics which he created of the NFT collections, which were not previously seen. And then you have some collections, notable collections like On-Chain Monkey, OCM, which was on Ethereum, and which did this, right? It figured out how to put the collection on Ethereum. It's a little difficult, but they've actually gone ahead and done it. There's one more notable example which I recently came across, called nouns.wtf, and this is actually some sort of a DAO, DAO, which is decentralized autonomous organization, which is what is possible on the blockchain, because on the blockchain now you can put any sort of code, right? On Ethereum you can put any sort of code, Ethereum, Solana, Polygon, all of these, right? And the code basically says that all the money coming in will be part of some treasury. And the treasury currently, I think this was launched in 2021, and the treasury has around $55 million or 27,000 ETH or something like that, which is quite amazing. So they have been releasing one NFT per day. And then there's a bidding system where the people of the, people who are associated with the nouns.wtf, I guess, actually bid for it. And then it goes on probably onto the OpenSea and the open ecosystem as well, or the secondary transactions where you do all the trading. So that also is on-chain. So this on-chain movement was growing, but in parallel there have been huge NFT collections which are still launching, totally off-chain. Like only the metadata is on-chain, which is basically the pointer that your NFT is there, right? For example, you have Outlaws, which was a recent collection, Nakamigos, which was a recent collection, totally off-chain, but they've done extremely well. You have this whole Ethereum ecosystem running, right? NFTs running. And then you have Solana, which actually took off in, I think, 2021, 2022. It did quite well. And then after the FTX scandal, because FTX had actually put a lot of money into Solana, and they were quite closely linked, Solana actually fell down quite a bit, right? And it did not recover as much yet. Though Solana actually has even better technology than Ethereum in terms of being able to do parallel processing. The number of transactions per second is currently, I think it can go up to 4,000 or some much bigger number than Ethereum. So as a result, gas fee, which is the fee that you pay to the validators or the people who are running the network, is much lower on Solana. It's almost negligible. It's less than $1 or some cents or something like that you'll pay per transaction. Now Solana is actually leading this technology, especially in something called a layer 1. Layer 1 is the main blockchain. It is leading that in terms of costs, optimizations, etc. Right now, recently they have come out with compressed NFTs or compression technology, where you can store data in a compressed way with using some Merkle trees or some kind of a structure that they've made, which allows a huge number of NFTs, like millions of NFTs, to be stored in very, very less amount of money. Solana is that. Then you have layer 2s like Polygon. Now Polygon, Optimism, etc. are layer 2s on Ethereum blockchain. And on the Ethereum blockchain, you have the whole blockchain, right, which is a little expensive. The gas fee is like, suppose you launch just a contract. You put the contract, which is just the set of code that my collection data is here, and if somebody pays me this much money, I will transfer that collection ownership from me to you. That is written in the contract. That itself, that contract, that set of code to put that also takes usually $40-50 right now, and would have taken even more during the when it was in the bullish phase. Now there is a slight bull run starting, but that's another matter, right? Polygon, etc., the layer 2s, which are much faster, almost equivalent to Solana is what they say, though Solana claims that it can scale much faster. And these layer 2s basically do the transaction using newer technology and much faster, and then they commit only the summaries of the transaction onto the layer 1, which is the Ethereum chain. So on Polygon, again, the gas fee is almost negligible. It uses something called Matic. One Matic runs around $1 or so, and usually gas fee is less than a Matic. Now that's a very interesting case, right? Because you can actually now create communities on Solana and Polygon almost for free. Now, again, but the issue in all of these is Polygon is of course dependent on Ethereum. Ethereum is not as decentralized. Even on Polygon, you don't put data on chain. Usually the whole structure of Solana, Polygon, Ethereum, etc. is that data is off chain. If you have to put it on chain, it's more expensive, it's more tedious. The structure is not really made for it. Now that's where ordinals came in, right? Now all these years, Bitcoin did not really have any kind of development going on. Bitcoin was just being used for financial transactions. You had a little bit of development, people trying to do development, something like Stacks, right? Which is another, like a layer 2 probably on top of Bitcoin, which allows you to write smart contracts. But it wasn't really taking off, right? For the normal person, you would use Bitcoin only for transactions and or storage of your value. And Bitcoin is the largest blockchain in terms of market cap as well, right? So if you look at the market cap, let's see, coin market cap right now, Ethereum has caught up quite well, but Bitcoin has $589 billion of market cap, which is the total amount of money having been put onto it right now. And Ethereum has $233 billion. Solana only has probably $11 billion, and Polygon has $7 billion. XRP has $37 billion, and Cardano has $11 billion. Those are like the bigger ones. And then USD Tether, which is pegged to the US dollar, which plays quite an important role in this ecosystem. I think it's also linked to the Ethereum blockchain, is actually always having the dollar value. So a lot of people, when you're doing trading as well, when you want to take out the risk from the blockchain, you don't want to keep your money in Bitcoin or Ethereum, you would just convert it into USDT, which can then get converted into on a one-on-one basis to US dollar. So it's a nice way of storing your, getting out of your risky positions and storing your assets as well. If you want to just peg your assets in USDT and then transact like that, you can do that through USDT. You had USDC, which was, I remember for a long time, it was right here. It was just below this also, right, in terms of market cap, and it's got wiped out. It lost its ability to kind of tethered to US dollar, which was pretty bad for the community. It actually caused, a bear market for some time after that. Recently, the prices have kind of picked up in the last few days a little bit, because SEC versus XRP court case came out in favor of XRP. SEC was saying that XRP and all these cryptocurrencies are securities, so you should have done this, and therefore you were liable, and they would have really gone after them in the US. But it turns out that the court ruled that no, it's not a security. That there was a little bit of a rally, especially if you see XRP. It was at something like $0.4 or something. Now it's gone to $0.7 within a day or two. So like I said, the market cap of Ethereum is almost like approximately half of Bitcoin now. It's been catching up quite fast, because Bitcoin was not really being used for anything apart from storage of value and just transactions, right? Now, that's where now, in the beginning of 2023, there was this developer called Casey Rodarmer, who's a proper Bitcoin maxi type of a developer, right? He understood the ecosystem, but he also wanted to develop the ecosystem. He wanted to have an ecosystem where you could do other things which were being done on Ethereum, but in a better way, in a more secure way. So what he started doing was he started working for almost 2 years on this thing called ordinal theory. And he published it. He published such a huge amount of data on it, right? Data, tools, etc. Came out with a bang in the beginning of this year. I think in January 2023 or so is when he published it, and it really took off. Let's now see what are ordinals and how did they, start coming in and competing in this heavily dominated Ethereum NFT market, right? So of course, for the last few years, Ethereum has been the clear leader in terms of the NFT volume, then followed by Solana, really, right? There are also smaller ecosystems on Polygon, and there's something called Tezos. That's another blockchain which has a nice thriving marketplace for NFTs as well. Now, there are few reasons why ordinals has really taken off. First is this Casey Rodarmer, the developer himself, came out with such an amazing ordinal theory. That ordinal theory, what he says are ordinals are nothing but just a numbering scheme for satoshis. Satoshis are just the lowest lowest portion that you can divide a Bitcoin into. Any Bitcoin gets divided into 100 million satoshis. Now, each satoshi can have one inscription. Now that inscription, what it is, how did it start, and why was it not being used for so many years? The way originally Bitcoin was designed was not really to have data and images and JPEGs stored on it, right? It was only a financial instrument. You have your own kind of currency. You have a blockchain which is totally decentralized, which is handling that currency. That was the original intention. Over the years, there was an upgrade to make Bitcoin more efficient. And that upgrade is called the Taproot upgrade, where what happened was a field was brought in where you can actually, the actual intention of the update was actually clubbing some inputs and outputs, as they call it, in blockchain transactions on the Bitcoin network. As another consequence of that update, a field was added where you can actually record some notes or you can record some data. The Taproot upgrade, which allowed you to kind of put another field, and it was mainly the intention was to kind of like have a description of the transactions. That's my guess on what the intent was, right? And this was back in 2017 or so. But even after that happened, nothing happened until this Casey Rodarmer actually started working on this apparently 2 years ago, which would put it in 2021. And he wanted another way of, he didn't want to do his NFT collections and all of that on Ethereum. He was not happy with the programming language, not happy with the security around it, etc. He created this whole protocol called the Ordinals theory. And in the Ordinals theory, ordinal is nothing but a numbering scheme for satoshis, and he has multiple types of numbering schemes. You can just do a normal numbering, you can do decimal notation. Then he also annotated them according to their rarity. For example, the first few satoshis which were part of the first few blocks have a special rarity to them. Some satoshis which were part of this transaction called pizza transaction, which is what happened when somebody gave away, I think, 1,000 or 10,000 Bitcoin to a person to deliver pizza because he didn't have cash. And that time Bitcoin was not so valuable, right? It was just getting started. So that would be worth approximately around $300 million or something like that, right? So that is the point which that transaction can actually be tracked on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin network. And whoever has satoshis from that transaction, those satoshis are also considered to have some value to them. So that's how this whole area goes, right? Now, on different satoshis, you can have inscriptions. I think currently there are just about 17 million inscriptions which have happened in total. And total number of satoshis can be, till the end, if you see, is 2.1 quadrillion. So it's 2.1 into 10 power 12 satoshi. So there's a long way to go, right? There's a lot of space. This is a thing that I was worried about. Oh, what happens if all the space runs out? Maybe you'll have a different technology at that point, right? Even though Bitcoin is supposed to be forever. But if you finish all the inscriptions, then you can't do any further inscriptions, then what are you going to do? Maybe you have to have some other technology or an upgrade to Bitcoin, etc. Anything could happen, right? You have these inscriptions which have started on ordinals. Ordinal is nothing but a numbering scheme for a Satoshi. So ordinal is nothing but a Satoshi, you can think, and you you're having inscriptions on that. Now inscriptions can be in any form. They can be in images, but the only thing is, see, Bitcoin doesn't have the latest technology. It's the oldest blockchain. So the gas fee is quite high and it's the most widely adopted, right? So gas fee, even to do one inscription, if you do like a few KB, if you do say, I think I've tried something around 100 KB or so, it actually gives you $40-$50 or $100 even. So it's quite expensive for one image, right? If you want to do a 10,000 collection, you can imagine how expensive it would be. So initially collections came out like this. They came out with 300, 400 because you can't really go much beyond that. If you do 300, 400 itself, you're coming up with spending quite substantial amounts. The quality of subscriptions or inscriptions is actually slightly higher because there's a more barrier to entry compared to say Solana or Polygon or even Ethereum. Because in Ethereum, you would have a smart contract that would be a one-time fee, and then you let the community mint out and put it on the blockchain. So each of their mint also costs you, each of the 10,000 there also costs you around $40-$50 in Ethereum. In Solana, it's less than $1 or much more, even more negligible actually. And Polygon as well is very low. Even Ethereum, the founder does not bear the cost, but the people who are buying the NFTs or minting it, as they call it, for the first time on the blockchain, from the smart contract to the blockchain, to the address that they own, right? That itself, each of the transaction does cost $40-$50. But in this case, people themselves were doing the inscriptions. So that's why it was expensive. And so there's a new thing that was part of the ordinal theory, but nobody had really implemented it until, again, OCM Dimensions. So the same NFT collection that I was talking about, OCM On-Chain Monkey, they actually launched an NFT collection on ordinals as well. Frank from DGods also launched an NFT collection on the ordinals, and they've done like 300. OCM Dimensions is 300. Frank DGods has also done something around 300-500 range or something like that. And what they've done, this OCM Dimensions actually used recursion. Recursion is something that the founder of ordinals, which is Casey Road Armor, he has it in his documentation. If you see, he says that we are going to follow a model which is closed. So this is one of the things which actually limits the development of ordinals and inscriptions in a way, in my opinion. It's also something that's very beautiful. It limits exposure to any system which is outside Bitcoin completely by design. So what it says is that in an inscription, you can put anything. You can even put HTML code, but that HTML code has to only be internally referenced. It can't reference something from outside. I think they kind of block anything that is coming from outside. You can reference anything that is on any other inscription using /content and then inscription ID, something like that. So basically you can have in the sense of a classic NFT collection, you could have traits, which is just maybe 100 or 150 images put on the blockchain, put on the Bitcoin as separate inscriptions, and then you could refer those 100 or 150 to create a 10,000 collection and let people mint it out with just one line, right? That 10,000 collection would just, for each of the 10,000, it would just be one line of code, which is around 10 bytes or like 50 bytes or something. It's quite a low cost. This is called recursion because you're creating something which is referring to something else on the blockchain. So recursion really took off. And recently now, again, people have started using recursion. So in ordinals, this is a major thing that actually helps you save cost. But still, of course, it's not comparable to something like Solana or Polygon. It barely brings it down to Ethereum levels because you can just inscribe some traits. You can then recursively call your final image based on which traits are used in that image. So it becomes a less amount of code you have to actually inscribe for each person who is finally buying. The second thing that's very interesting is that people are not just building JPEGs and they're just not just building image NFTs. People have started putting games and video games. People have initially, I think in the first few inscriptions itself, people have put Doom, like a smaller version of Doom, and you're actually able to play it. Anything that you can put into an HTML format, you're actually able to do. Suppose you have to refer some style sheets and CSS. You can actually inscribe CSS first and then call that in. So the only issue is you can't currently call external libraries from outside the ecosystem. So you can't have your image stored in IPFS or Solana and then call that. Or you can't call some libraries like React unless somebody inscribes React here. This is my current understanding so far, which is quite interesting, because everything that is being referred to in any program is also within the Bitcoin blockchain, decentralized, always there forever, at least until the Bitcoin chain lasts, right? And it's all on chain. There is no off chain. You're not pointing to IPFS, you're not pointing to RV or any external entity. So that is the beauty of the blockchain, of Bitcoin ordinals theory, which has made this possible. And this is all ordinals theory, that you can't call things from outside, etc. But somebody could easily come up with a new theory that says that, you know what, this is ordinals, let's call this ordinals 2.0, where you can actually refer things from outside and then you create a whole ecosystem around that. I'm sure things like that could also happen. Then you have something called bitmaps, .bitmap, right? People have started not just inscribing images. In fact, the largest inscription is texts. Now, as part of the text, you can actually do something like some number .bitmap. Now, what happens if you do that? You can actually create a whole army, a huge number of people who have inscribed .bitmap serially onto the blockchain. Now, onto the Bitcoin blockchain as ordinals, right? And then it would follow the ordinal theory as well. But you could also then assign that .bitmap and then have them do some operations with that, right? You could create, that could become their digital identity, and then you could create a metaverse out of it. So now that is not very clear what they will create with that .bitmap, but the theory seems to be that they will create a whole metaverse of kind. So this is where the whole system is at. It's exploded in volumes. Then there's something called BRC69, right? BRC20. Now, what is BRC69? BRC69 is the standard which was recently released by one of the launch pads. It has that whole code, basically. How do you do that recursive encryption? Previously, you would have to do, you would have to figure out the code yourself, etc. Here, they've actually given you the code. They've said, do this, do this, do this, do this. It's like one page only, right? And people are able to copy that code and use it to inscribe the traits and then call the traits and then do the final inscription to get the final outputs. BRC20 is the equivalent of ERC20, which is what they call the, if you have your own currency on top of Ethereum, this is like your own currency or own coin, which is fungible, not non-fungible, but fungible. Fungible means interchangeable, which means that there's no difference between one coin and the other coin. It's basically your shit coins on Ethereum all are in ERC20. So BRC20 kind of started that off. Now the latest thing is this BRC69 and this recursive inscriptions which is going on. There has also been talk of what if you want to run whole Bitcoin node also as an ordinal. You could inscribe it and then it could, keep running. The other thing that people talk about is that previously your backend was uncensorable in a way because you have the blockchain. But final output that you want to show to the user has to go through a website domain. And the website domain can get taken down by governments, by anybody, and it is centralized control. Now this gives you front end which is decentralized, because the front end anyone can call the inscription and it is hosted and you have that HTML put there forever. So this is the advantage, but there is a slight disadvantage, but it's part of the free market. It's part of being having complete control, which is that you might have things like pawn put onto that. And it will be there forever. Nobody can ever take it down, right? As long as the Bitcoin network lasts. So you have things like that also, which are a little concerning. And the latest craze has been bitmaps, .bitmaps. So this person came, he said, I think it's Blockamoto on Twitter. And there are these two YouTube people on a podcast. They run a podcast. They've been, promoting .bitcoin, and then there is a guy called Schechter or something. He's building another metaverse, bought like 3,000 bitmaps. I think 800,000 have been bought. They had a blockout party, and 800,000 people buying .bitmap is quite a big thing, right? So everyone is now waiting, and they bought it at a low price. It's like they bought it at like $2 or $3 or even less. just the gas fee, and now you have to buy it from somebody else for like $8, $10, I think is the current price that I've seen. So interesting, interesting what's happening. This is the metaverse, building initiative that is being taken on, but it's not clear yet how it will work, how it will go, will it succeed or not. But Ordinals definitely has shaken up NFTs completely. There's so much volume. It's keeping Ethereum on its heels. Something to experiment with if you, like us and me, are also planning to release NFT collections, are also a founder and a builder in the space. Thank you.